Hey everyone, welcome back to Revelation Drive, the Christian music podcast for finding new tunes. I'm your host, Devin Lane Carr. If you're looking for Christian rock music, you can find my songs on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, and anywhere else you may listen. Today's guest is making independent worship music, I would say. Very, very light and on the ambient side, but still very much in your traditional sense of church worship. She's also been in a band with her sister called the Sunflowers, and she is also conveniently married to her producer. Please welcome Elissa Tips and her husband Chad. Guys, thanks for being on the show.
Hey,
really
it's great to be here.
It's an honor.
Good, awesome. So the first thing I always ask my guests, because this is a Christian podcast, is I like to have people share their testimonies. So my first question is, how did you guys come to know the Lord, and what part, if any, did music play in that? I'll start with you, Elissa.
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. Well, I've been a believer my whole life, and it's actually, I can thank my parents for that. My dad was a musician as well from before I was born, and so he and my mom found God and got saved in the Jesus movement in the 70s. And so they were making music as well before I was born, and then they introduced me to the Lord. So, but I remember growing up, my dad would always write Christian music and Christian songs, and so he had his guitars all around the house, and that was really just what kind of gave me the opportunity to express my faith and my love for the Lord through music, is just picking up one of Dad's guitars. And but going to church growing up, I just was drawn to the Lord, so.
Yeah, so music kind of runs in your family.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you kind of had a good setup from the beginning of just having just that background of making music just to start out, and then just kind of taking it yourself from that direction. Yeah, that's really nice. It makes it really easy to get started and get moving. I know I have a lot of music background in my family as well. My mom and dad sang in a college choir, and I took piano lessons really early in life, so it makes it easier once you know you have a knack for it from an early age.
Definitely. And it was a great beginning for us as the Sunflowers. My sister and I and my parents, we were on the road together. And we first started out when I was a teenager playing at coffee houses really locally up and down the Front Range. And so, I met Chad at youth group, but we didn't play music together for, about 10 years after we met. So, but the rest is history. So.
Yeah. Do you guys talk about music though?
Me and Chad?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, all the time.
Yeah. Cool. So this is kind of a bonding thing from the get-go.
Yeah. So. Well, we were in church youth group together, and it was quite a large youth group, and so we just didn't interact a whole lot. But Chad was a guitar player probably from about the same age that I started playing.
Yeah. I started in children's ministry, which was fun, because we got to get outside the box a little bit of what was maybe happening in church music.
Yeah.
I got to get started under a guy who would take old tunes from the 50s and 60s, like surf tunes and Beatles tunes and songs out of movies, and put Christian lyrics to them for the kids. And then he tasked me with recording all of this and making an album. And so I was mixing surf music, CCM, pop tunes, top 40 sounds, and each song kind of needed a different treatment. And so that was that was your introduction. Thrust into just the deep end of production and arrangement as a teenager.
No, I totally get that, because that's kind of what I've had to do with my music, is kind of just learn production on the side. It's just sort of become necessary. Well, I don't know. I feel like that's kind of one of the double-edged swords of YouTube, is you can do everything yourself, but you also, in some ways, kind of have to learn things you wouldn't normally learn to do in order to make that happen. But that's funny, because that sounds an awful lot like what Dan's band does with taking old songs and changing the lyrics to make it like more Christian appropriate.
Yeah.
So sounds like you'd have some interesting stories to share with him.
Oh, we had
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. We had a lot of fun in those years, but that was my kind of entry into music. And then I was doing live sound, and then I was in the band, and I was writing songs myself. And then I'd find her dad in the sound booth whenever the Sunflowers were playing, and I'd hang out with Don and pick his brain about production and hear his stories of, like what they were doing. I was a little too shy to talk directly to Elissa in those early years, because there she is on stage.
Of course, that's very starstruck. Like
that was me. That was me.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, totally get that. Yeah, luckily Rachel didn't have that problem with me. So that brings me nicely into my next question, though. You have a lot of experience playing music with your sister in the Sunflowers. Just for people who haven't experienced this, what's it like playing in a band with your family, like a sibling?
Well, my sister and I are only 2 years apart, and so we really grew up very close as kids, even sharing the same friends and that kind of thing. And so when we started, I think I remember her learning guitar down the hall, and I thought, I think I'm going to do that as well. I'm going to try that out. And we both kind of learned around the same time. And then I started writing songs, and she said, well, teach me your songs. And it kind of just happened naturally and organically. And then the band thing, I asked the Lord, I don't want to start a band unless it's what you want me to do.
Yeah.
And I was like 16 at the time. So really had a lot of time on my hands. But a bunch of girls in the youth group came together. So we were like an all-girl band. We had 5 girls at the time.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So Becca, she was always like just such a strong support. And even now, she lives down the street with her kids, so we're still really close.
That's awesome.
But she would do everything that just things that I couldn't imagine doing. Like she started our first website. She started booking us all over, and she's just very organized and very talented. So she started to play bass in the band, then keyboards and background vocals, and she was just pretty much doing everything. So.
Yeah. I found an old video of the Sunflowers playing live. Like it was outdoors, so I guess it was like a music festival or something. I was like, is her sister playing bass? That's really cool.
Yes.
Yes. That I think you touched on something really important. Is you don't want to try to force things with people. Not every band that you're in is the best project you could be involved in, even when it's people who are really talented. I was kind of talking about that in the last episode with Dan's band. Is it's so important to get along with the people that you're making music with. Like what I would say is, what's your life like off the stage and without instruments in your hand? Like, is it even somebody you would hang out with if you weren't playing music together? Because I've been in a lot of bands where the only reason we got together was to play music, and it kind of just starts to feel like work after a while if you do it that way.
Yeah, and we often talked about being servant-hearted, and we read Philippians 2 quite often when we were at the 5 girls in the band, because we needed to go deeper in our ability to serve and to look outward instead of thinking like, who's going to get to sing the lead vocal or whatever. And so especially when we were first starting out, that was all trying to be defined. And so we had to really look at being a servant. And I like Philippians 2 because it talks about, have the same nature as Christ, who, even though being God, took upon, the cross for us. So he's our example. And so even especially in music ministry, but in doing music together, there comes a time where you have to choose to just serve others. And
that's so important, because like at the end of the day, you're making music for other people to listen to. And I think a lot of people get caught up in what music can do for them and what
that's true.
How famous it can make them or how cool it can make them look, and
how fulfilling it can feel.
How it can fulfill you
if it's your identity.
Yeah, exactly. If you put your whole identity into it, which and I think it's so important when you're in a band to just have an attitude of, what can I do to make the entire project better? What is my role and my purpose in this? And for some people, that is being the lead singer and getting up there and getting everybody involved and getting people to sing along and leading them into worship, you know? If that's like the gifts that God gave you, I think that's the key. Is just
a lot of the things you just brought up, including longevity of the relationship with the people in the band, it all comes down to servanthood. If you're ready to serve those people in humility, you're going to have a longer relationship than if you were just serving the music.
Yes.
You need to serve each other in service of God and in service of the listener.
Yeah.
So you're serving God, you're serving the vision of the band, you're serving, hopefully, the listener is a part of the conversation and you're not making just music for yourself, which is hard. You need to kind of have an audience and connect with them in some way to feel out where's your cultural space that you're trying to live in with the music. But then if you want to be in ministry for any length of time with somebody, that's going to take unity of the Spirit, number one.
Yes. Yeah.
But then also a servant's heart.
Yeah.
And I think you hit it on the nose because the unity of the Spirit. And I remember my dad really praying a lot about unity when I was a kid, especially as we started the band, and he felt a call to support what his daughters were doing, which was pretty unique and pretty special. But they went on the road with us everywhere, and I remember they also told us it's so important to have a prayer team behind you when you go out. And so they would talk about what the ministry that God was kind of stirring in our family through my sister and I, and they got a number of people in our church connected to the vision, and then they became our prayer team. And so we would have a prayer meeting, like a one-night prayer meeting before every tour, which my parents kind of started and led and hosted at their home. And so that prayer for unity kind of
I was in a lot of bands where we should have done that.
Grew. And I just thank God for my parents' maturity in the Lord to lead in a way. And Becca and I think looking back, I'm grateful for our humility to say, they're our parents, but we're still going to listen to them, even though I'm turning 18 and then I was 20 and I was, still, we were 4 or 5 years into the band, but still saying God's brought them. My parents are a gift to me, even though I'm a full-on adult. I can do my own thing. I could go on the road, go wherever I want by myself. But I said, come along. We want to be together.
Absolutely.
We want to have the family element was a strength to us. It was a foundation and
doing ministry under authority.
It was
is a beautiful thing. It's a God-given gift to have oversight, to have accountability, to have wisdom pouring into what you're doing, and then to listen to it. Again, in humility. It takes humility to do that.
Yeah. I think a lot of people who have never been in a band, or especially a church band, they think the musicians on church, they just can do whatever they want and look awesome and worship God. And it's really not like that at all. Like if we want to have a worship experience that resonates with people, then we have to be humble. We have to be willing to say, okay, whatever the worship leader's vision is, I'm going to get it behind it 100%, even if it's not something that I agree with. And I've had to do that before. I'm sure you guys have too. But the trade-off to that is that it changes the spiritual atmosphere of the worship band as well. I don't know how humans can do this, but I feel like we can tell subconsciously when someone is humble and when someone is proud and egotistic. Something just feels different when a band is up there humbly worshiping the Lord.
As believers, it's a tough balance, and I think it takes the Holy Spirit to do it because we're living sacrifices. It'd be beautiful to just say, God, here's a sacrifice, but there's no stewardship in it. There's no seeking for excellence. And that's where the living part comes in. It's a sacrifice burning on the altar before God, but we are stewarding it and seeking for excellence that will bring him glory while we're laying it down.
Yes.
So there's this humility and servanthood, but also stewardship, living at the same time in tension.
Yes.
Man, that takes the Holy Spirit to nail.
It sure does. Yeah. Because it's so easy to just want to do it the way everybody else does it. And just like, hey, look at me. Look at all these awesome
Or you see an
things I can
awesome
do.
church on YouTube and you're like, we could do that.
And then you try it. And
Yeah.
it's like, oh, maybe it's not that easy.
And that, that's another point, is being who God made you to be, as your expression of Christ, and that's what Becca and I in the Sunflowers, we were just very unique. Back in I guess it was like 2008 when we kind of had our rise in recognition nationally, and we met other girl bands, and they were just trying to do, this rock chick thing, or they were trying to dress a certain way, and they were trying to find the label that, I could tell.
Yeah, try the
literally,
character type.
maybe even literally a label, a label to pay for their albums or whatever. But Becca and I really characterize ourselves as worship leaders first, to serve people, to bring them to Christ.
Yeah.
And we wanted all of our lyrics to really amplify Jesus. And I think, where was I going with this? But
you were different. You were very individual.
We were very individual, and I think that was key, because when I would look around and think I could go this direction or that direction with the image or the sound, I kept feeling the Holy Spirit call me back to something that was more authentic and real in me. And then at the end of the day, that ended up carving a path for our ministry that was exactly what God had intended. Instead of me saying, I want to be cool, I want to, get more recognition, I want to fight this out on my own. And
but that attitude shows in everything you do, whether it's Christian music or secular music. Yeah. Something that Aaron Skaggs told me one time is that you're the best way you can worship God is to be the fullest you that He made you to be.
Yes.
And I think there's a lot of people out there, like especially in Christian music, who want to hear something genuine and not something that is trying to just be sold to them.
Oh, sure.
So so you guys produce a lot of your music here at home, right?
We get it started here for the most part. We farm out a little bit of the work.
Sure.
We have different musicians we'll call on who have similar ability to take some stems, track to it, send it back, all aggregated, all here.
Yeah.
And then sometimes we will sit with something and live with it for a while, and I'll mix it a couple times to get like good scratch mix going, good rough mix. And then we'll move on and farm it out to a mix engineer who we've used, a guy out in Portland for the last couple songs, and he's done an amazing job, really connected with the vision of what we're doing. He's familiar with the genre.
Do you have somebody else master for you?
Yes, we've had a couple different guys master, but the last guy we loved, he's out in Virginia, I think. So it's all over the map.
Okay,
and not everybody's in Nashville. It's kind of it's a very diverse kind of thing.
Yeah, totally.
Which is a beautiful thing to me.
Yeah, you guys don't rush yourselves, do you? Like you
not at all.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing that's great about being independent is you can just do what you want and take all the time you want and make sure it's something that you're proud of.
When the song comes, though, I've noticed this is something I'm still kind of trying to figure out. It's like, if I don't move fast enough, though, when the song initially comes...
He's talking about me as a writer.
Well, yeah. But, like, it has to do with your gift, though. There's, like, an in the moment, this, like, flashbang of God pouring out the song. And then you want to, like, capture it in that moment. And that is the most true version of the song often.
Sure.
Kind of, like, coming back and kind of, like, fine-tuning it, that's fine. But... sometimes we'll be waiting for that bridge. Yeah. And I'm like, if only I had like watched the kids for a couple or more hours that night. Maybe she could have gotten it.
Yeah. We have been in a season of raising kids, and so the songs are coming slower. But
totally. Yeah, but at least what is coming out, you have put a lot of thought and a lot of focus into.
Yeah.
Maybe you should like keep a journal and be like, when that Holy Spirit moment comes, you're like, okay, this was how it felt in that moment
You're
when the
right.
song first
You
came
are
in,
right.
and then try to use that as a reference guide going forward. I get what you
That's
mean
good.
though, because especially now that a lot of music is produced on computers, it's very easy
Sure.
for it to feel like disingenuine if you're not taking the right approach to it.
We had a really fun song come, and we still sing it here at home, even though it didn't really come together as a recording yet. It was just felt so organic to sing someone else's song as the bridge, and then we came full circle and
kinda
realized
medleyed.
how complicated that would be to pull off.
Yeah, totally.
We
The
medleyed-
licensing of it.
Yeah, like an older bridge.
Yeah.
Put it into
we
the new
still
song.
sing it here at home with, it's an old Delirious song as the bridge of our song.
Yeah.
And
That's
we love
great.
it that way. And
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd ever change it because
Yeah.
I like singing it that way. But
Yeah.
you
No,
know.
I started doing that too with like some of the material I'm working on my YouTube channel where like, so I've been working on like punk rock versions of hymns. Like
Cool.
old hymns from like
Nice.
hundreds of years ago, and they sound really cool. But then I go back to the original hymn after listening to what I did so many times, and I'm like, oh, this sounds slow. Like I've gotten used to how I played it, but I don't know. I feel like if it's a great song, you can play it in any genre, and it'll
Yes.
come
Yeah,
out great.
well, I loved pulling from hymns when I was just noodling as a younger man
Yeah,
because it's
totally.
all public domain.
I think
Yes.
you might have to explain
That's
what
the
noodling
secret.
means.
Oh yes, for the non-guitarists out there.
Well, no, I'd sit down and take hymns that I really didn't know out of old hymnals that my parents had sitting around, and I'd study the harmony because it'd have like 4-part harmony, and I'd just like take 8 bars of it and try and read out the harmony and get a loop going and like try to sing the 4-part harmony myself.
Yeah,
And the little exercises like that.
but it made you better.
Yeah, you learn a lot
Yeah.
doing that kind of thing. Yeah.
It's amazing how actually studying music theory can make your music sound better.
Well, it can get you where you want to go a little bit faster because you have a
Yeah.
map.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Well, this is a question that I like to ask all of my guests on this show is because this is a podcast for independent Christian music is what's something you would like to see in Christian music right now that you're not seeing a lot of?
Oh, that's a really good question. Oh, Chad, go ahead.
Yeah?
You have an answer, I
Okay,
can tell.
I have a fun what if because when I got started we didn't have in-ears, and when I got started we didn't. It was a little more, it feels folksy compared to what it is now, what the pop thing has become, where everything's auto-tuned and everything's edited to perfection, to the grid. And then like what you're seeing visually is people like singing to the track, basically,
Yes.
a lot of the time, which I don't hold anything against that. That's where we've arrived.
Yeah.
And praise God that the technology, it can definitely bring God glory through that pop vein. But what I love is when I see something that is so genuinely raw
Yeah.
and acoustic, and you're actually hearing people sing in the mic. You see this a lot in the folk genre still. And I think that Christian music could easily strip it down, go without
Yes.
in-ears, go without a click, see what happens. And
Makes
I
it
think
more genuine.
I think we could stand to see some people come full circle and be that vulnerable to
Yes.
not auto-tune. And,
Yeah, absolutely.
there's a family on YouTube, the Petersons. I'm always watching their videos.
Oh,
They're so cool.
great.
You know
Yeah.
what I'm talking
Yes,
about?
Like they do the folk
I-
instruments together.
I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's an example of like off the click, no auto tune.
Yeah, just go for
like
it,
They're
yeah.
just singing in mics. And maybe they're just so good at what they do, they're tricking even me, but I feel like it's real.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
what you're hearing and what you're seeing are in the moment.
Yeah, I'm starting to say this every episode, but I purposely try not to be too much of a of a perfectionist with this project, with my YouTube channel in general. Like, I try to keep things professional as best as I know how, but I sometimes I leave little mistakes in on purpose, just so people know this is a real person doing a real thing. Because I totally agree with you. I think that if you get so obsessed with it being perfect, it doesn't sound real anymore, and it doesn't sound like a real person.
Well, one of the things we do is we use Melodyne instead of Autotune on our lead vocals.
Yeah.
There's little things like that. We're trying to leave groove in the drums. We're trying to, sometimes I will auto-tune the first take of something and then double it so that I have kind of like pitch, for like a cello track or something. And then I'll hopefully use the second and third tracks and mute the auto-tuned one. Little subtle things. They're just trying to put realism back in the craft.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, last question I wanted to ask you guys is, what do you guys have planned next? Like, what's the next step for you guys?
Yeah. Well, like Chad was talking, like, things tend to happen very organically here. And so we just keep serving through worship. We love leading worship from time to time, and just whenever we can, getting to write and, record. So, we're still just raising kids and enjoying that. And so,
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Do you guys have any shows coming up that I can do a plug for?
I would love to tell you that we had a show coming up, but there's so much online if anyone wants to go, sunflowers.com.
Yes, yeah.
And the thing about our name is spelled S-O-N.
Yes.
Flowers with a Z.
Yeah.
So that has thrown off people for decades.
I'm sure
Don't worry.
Has. Yeah.
But there's meaning to it. So,
yes.
Yeah,
talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, my sister and I, at the very end of, when we were touring and that kind of thing, we wrote a devotional book for girls. And so actually my heart would be to do another girls conference. We did them all over the country. And so they were called Made to Shine. And we also toured and did conferences that were all over the country with Lifeway Publishing called You and Your Girl. And so that was really our passion, was to minister to teen girls, junior high girls. And so we still have our devotional available. We have CDs, and then obviously songs that Chad has produced on Spotify, Apple Music. And we have a music video or two on YouTube. So, Love Walked In is the title of our music video.
Yep,
so,
awesome. Okay, cool. Yeah, we'll definitely check that out. Okay, well, that's going to do it for this episode of Revelation Drive. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. You're awesome. Thanks for being on the show, guys. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and check out my music, and we'll see you next time. Bye.